actually over to them. And Jim, if you'd like to say a few words.
Sure. So thanks for coming out this morning. I think this will be a good opportunity to interrogate Edward here and see what he has to say. You don't get to interrogate me, but you can ask him anything. I just wanted to kick it off. I think we're at a sort of a transitional moment here, and so I just wanted to get some things out of the way, and I'll say AI, machine learning, cloud, blockchain. Am I missing any other buzzwords?
That's enough.
Yeah. So there were bingo cards in the back if you didn't get them for technology bingo. But let me start by asking you a question. What does the chief architect do?
So what I do is first of all, I report to Larry Ellison, who's the founder and chairman of Oracle Corporation. And what I do is I provide technical direction across all of Oracle's products. And in addition to that, I'm responsible for a few specific things at Oracle, such as Oracle's security, so our own internal security, our product security, all of our infrastructure that we use to establish policies, enforce policies about security in our cloud and the internal systems we use. I have various development groups that working for me that do things like operating system and some database work and other things.
Okay, let me do one to get this one out of the way. When you hear the words emerging technologies, what do you consider an emerging technology?
Well, I mean, emerging technologies are, technological solutions to challenging problems that are at hand, but not really well integrated yet into the way that people build and deploy applications.
Okay, because we know there's a regulatory process going on to look at emerging technologies, about half of which I'd say are IT related, so it is a topic that comes out. Where does cloud fit into this?
Well, I think cloud is really the most important emerging technology. Maybe in some ways it sounds strange to call it emerging because cloud has been here for a while. Lots of companies have been in the business providing clouds for a while, and which has a lot of different definitions about what cloud really is. But I think for most customers, that is governments and private companies, they're really for the most part just dipping their toe into that cloud computing water, and just now starting to uptake that into what they're consuming in terms of IT.
Why do you say they're just dipping their toe in? Because it has been around for a while. I mean,
well, it's been around for a long time. But if you take a look at most governments, if you take a look at most private companies, the bulk of their data is not managed in a cloud. I mean, the bulk of their data is still managed more or less traditionally. So on computers that maybe they're in someone else's data center because it's like a hosting arrangement, but often still in their own data centers. And they have a lot of people they employ to manage the systems, to build the systems, to integrate the systems, right? All of which, of course, is very expensive and very challenging.
Because we have been hearing about computing as a utility for probably about 20 years now, when you think about it. And if you had asked me in 1998 or 1999, I would have said that within a couple of years, you'd just be able to plug into the wall and get all the computing and memory resources you need. Are we there yet?
Well, I think I would say for many enterprises, for many parts of government, the answer is yes. Everything that you need in order to build and run and maintain complex, compelling information systems is available from cloud computing providers like Oracle.
What about so you could say cloud, where does cloud fit in with artificial intelligence? I had to say it.
Yeah, well, okay, so artificial intelligence is just kind of a side comment. I mean, artificial intelligence is not a single thing, right? Artificial intelligence is a collection of powerful data analysis techniques. I mean, usually oriented around labeling. So, figuring out, what is in this image, or figuring out, is this pattern of behavior on a computer indicative of an attack occurring, right? And there's many, many computational techniques that fall under that umbrella of artificial intelligence. I think, sometimes if you hear the word like machine learning, again, it really all refers to the same thing. It's a large collection of computational techniques and data management processes that people use in order to help their decision making.
So how do you think it's going to change cybersecurity? And we ought to talk about two parts of that. First, you have the ability to automate a lot of functions that used to require humans, so it has implications for demand in the market. Mm. And second, one of my assumptions is that anything we can get as a defender, the other guys can get as an attacker. So how does this suite of technologies change cybersecurity?
Well, when you operate a cloud like Oracle does, we manage important data, critical data for tens of thousands of customers today, like in our data centers across the world. And of course, there are a lot of bad actors out there who'd like to get to it, either to get the data or, worse, try to change it. And so, while we employ thousands of people whose job it is security, right, that's really not enough, right? At the same time, we do all of the things that you would expect in terms of securing our cloud environments. We have to do more. And one of the things that we do more is that we use artificial intelligence to detect anomalous behavior that we can investigate and determine whether or not it's actually an attack. Is it the signature of some behavior of a bad actor, right? And that gives us scalability. And you mentioned like, okay, everything that we might have access to, an attacker might have access to. That's actually not true, right? There's an asymmetry of information, right? Because we have access to the behavior of tens of thousands of legitimate customers running in our cloud, right? Attackers don't have access to all that data. They don't have access to that pattern of behavior. So while we get to learn from the legitimate behavior of tens of thousands of customers, they don't get to learn from that. And so that actually gives us an advantage, which I'll point out is 100% opposite of the way it is in the conventional computing world. In the conventional computing world, right, there's asymmetry, but the asymmetry is in favor of the attackers, right? Because if I have, think of all the enterprises that are all in the world, various parts of government, all of these private companies, governments all over the world, right? All of those data centers, all of those systems that have been put together, assembled, integrated in essentially sort of a craftsman-like approach, right? Well, that means that all of those systems that have been built, deployed in thousands and thousands of data centers around the world have to be correctly and properly secured, right? And it's manifestly obvious that has not happened, right? I mean, most cyber attacks actually occur for just the dumbest reasons. Systems aren't patched, right? And it's because it's very expensive. It's very expensive to properly secure complex systems. And that is an asymmetry which has worked to the advantage of attackers.
10 years ago, Verizon does this annual breach report, and on that line, 10 years ago, they wrote that 85% of most successful attacks, 85% of successful attacks only required the most basic techniques. And so last year, they put out it's annual, so they put out last year's version, and it said 85% of successful attacks require only the most basic techniques. So you do have to wonder, what have we been doing for the last 10 years? But you've written a couple times that you think that the shift to sort of the blend of cloud and AI is going to actually move the advantage to the defender. So is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's when you're trying to secure, when you're trying to secure information systems, right? What you want is to minimize your attack surface, right? And you want to minimize the number of discrete components that have to be secured. So in cloud, cloud is minimizing the number of environments that have to be secured. I mean, we have many, many data centers around the world, cloud data centers that host, that operate systems on behalf of our customers, right? Either infrastructure as a service or platform as a service or applications, right? But all of those environments are entirely homogeneous, right? We're very, very disciplined about the kinds of technologies that we deploy in those cloud data centers, and we're very disciplined about the way that we patch. We're very disciplined about not having especially diverse sets of technologies that are deployed, so that means there's less that we need to secure. I mean, we have to do it that way because otherwise we could not possibly economically operate our clouds. Every cloud vendor has to do it that way. Homogeneity is key in cloud. And that is very, very different than most of Oracle's customers that I see who've done it themselves over the years in the traditional way. I mean, the traditional way that customers have consumed IT has been, okay, I'm going to go buy some variety of servers, some variety of storage, right? Software from various vendors. I'm going to hire an integrator to go put it all together for me. And so what happens is like I said, building an application, it's like the work of a craftsman, right? Okay. But the problem is that if you hire a craftsman, right, to build your cars, every car is different, right? And it's very, very hard to keep a fleet of cars built by individual craftsmen running. It's even harder in the case of IT systems to keep those IT systems secured. Cloud is a fundamentally different approach, right? The information technology is applied in a way which is much more homogeneous. And furthermore, because we're doing this on behalf of many, many thousands of customers, right, we can afford to do it very well. I mean, we hire far, far more engineers working on security than any one of our customers, even our largest customer, could afford to hire themselves. And because we have this asymmetric advantage, we have the information about what is a properly operating system. We have this asymmetric advantage of, we have more resources than the bad guys. It lets us build environments that are just fundamentally more secure than customers can afford to build themselves.
Yeah, this is the OPM story for those of you who remember that, which is you had whatever it was, 20 people at OPM in their IT shop versus the entire People's Liberation Army. So it wasn't exactly a fair fight. This one's a little off topic, but why do you think people are so, what do you want to say, concerned about AI? So you're always seeing people saying it's Skynet or RoboCop.
Yeah, they actually filmed part of one of the Terminator movies at our headquarters. So,
Really, which one?
I think it was the latest one. So, yeah.
Are you in it? Cameo role?
No.
Oh man.
No such luck. No. Yeah, I think it's really based on misunderstanding. I mean, it's a funny, like for if you're an AI researcher or practitioner and you see the concern that people have about it, it's actually humorous because what people assume AI can actually do, in terms of like independent intelligence and operation is far beyond what the current state of the art is. I think people, as always, are concerned about automation. Okay, what does that mean for work, for jobs, for other things? I'm personally not worried about that part at all. So just to give you an example, so part of what we do in Oracle Cloud is something called autonomous database, right? So we've because when we built Oracle Database into Oracle Cloud, right, there are in the freedom of engineering that we have because we totally understand the environment. In fact, we're building the environment specifically to run the Oracle Database well. It means that we can automate many of the kinds of activities that customers previously had to hire expensive labor to do themselves. So things like configuring and tuning the Oracle Database. I mean, you could spend your entire career learning how to turn the many hundreds of knobs that exist on Oracle Database to make it run as fast as possible, right? But the thing is, we can do that automatically a lot better than any individual human can do. Now, does that mean that we're going to be causing people to lose their jobs for DBAs? No, we're not. Because it turns out that the most valuable thing that DBAs do, right, is not turn the knobs. Although
database administrators.
Database administrators, yes. The most valuable thing that database administrators do is help people who build applications figure out how to take advantage of the functionality of the Oracle database. They spend most of their time turning knobs, but that's not where the value is. The value is helping people use the Oracle database effectively in their applications. And so what we're really doing It's we're unleashing people who are database administrators to add more value. We're not getting rid of their jobs.
That's a good one, because it is sort of a theme in Washington, and I guess in general, that you have age scientists warning that this will be, we had someone at CSIS warn that this would be the end of humanity as we know it. So I was kind of looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it couldn't. How much worse can it get? So I'm going to ask a geeky question. I have two geeky questions that I want to ask, and you guys can get coffee or something while I'm doing them. But first, how do we deal with legacy technologies? And you touched on that a little bit, because so sometimes people say we need to re-engineer the internet, and it's like, okay, so we have like 3 zillion devices operating, systems that are at least 20 years old in some cases, software. How do you deal with this huge legacy hump? What do you do to get over it? And how long will it take?
No, okay. Well, it'll take forever. I mean, listen. There are systems out there running, versions of Oracle database that were just coming out when I joined the company in 1986. Okay, so because what happens is people build these stacks of hardware and software, and once they work, they really don't like to change them. Okay, and so yes, there are very old combinations of technology out there that people use to do useful things still today, right? And so one of the things that at least we focus on as a cloud vendor is making it possible for people to take old software and run it on our cloud. Now, if you do that, if you take your old software stack and you run it on our cloud, I mean, you're not taking advantage of some of the advanced things that we have. I mean, you're not using autonomous database, you're not using some of our other platform services, but you're at least running those old deployments, those old configurations of software on a modern infrastructure, right, that is much more secure than, almost certainly much more secure than what you're running on today.
Yeah, so if I typed the right flavor of Oracle database into Shodan, would it show me all the old ones?
I don't know what Shodan is.
Oh, Shodan's it's a search engine that looks for particular configurations that one could exploit.
Yeah, you might. I mean, I would really recommend to any customers out there running Oracle databases that are no longer supported, versions of, or any, not just Oracle database, any software that's no longer supported, to get off, right? Because there are, all software has bugs. Some of those bugs are security bugs, and so they need to be fixed and addressed, really quickly. Now, to give you a story though, I don't think it's still the case anymore, but about 10 years ago, I got an emergency escalation at Oracle for version 7 of the Oracle database, which is basically was shipped probably 2-3 years after I joined Oracle, right? And basically, we had to fix this bug. Okay, and we hadn't supported Oracle 7 for, decades. Okay, and we had to fix the bug because the key management software that's used to load encryption keys into F-16s depended on it. Okay, and so, we fixed it. Okay, and we fixed the bug on Oracle 7 running on an operating system, SCO Unix, that wasn't supported anymore either. Right, okay, so that's just, that's an extreme example, but it's a real example. You get these very old technology stacks that are still very important.
So I wasn't going to raise this, but since you brought it up, I will. How do you work with open source? What's the open source thing? Because when you say Linux, it wasn't Linux in this case, but Linux is an open source platform. So where does open source fit into what you're thinking about?
Well, open source is definitely important development paradigm that we've participated in for a really long time. So I mentioned that, besides security and some other things at Oracle, one, I'm in charge of operating systems at Oracle. Well, we have 2 operating systems that we have as products that work on. One is Solaris, which is Unix. The other is Linux. So Oracle has been part of the Linux community for many years now, since early 2000s. We've been in the Linux business for many years over the same time frame. We provide the MySQL database, which is open source. We contribute a lot to open source projects, but we also consume a lot from open source, right? And many parts of our cloud are built using open source components. Now, it's kind of interesting. One interesting thing about open source and around the cybersecurity question has always been, well, okay, is open source intrinsically more secure or less secure than proprietary software, right? Because some people would like to say, well, people can see the source code, so it's sort of like peer review, right? So that means it's naturally more secure, right? It hasn't actually turned out that way, though, right? Because many of the worst vulnerabilities, the most widespread vulnerabilities that have had to been addressed, are actually in open source components. Because what tends to happen with open source is people consume the open source and then they sort of forget about it, right? They're running some old open source version of some component, right?
You mean the customer, basically?
The customer, people is anyone, right? Yeah. Anyone who basically builds systems, right? And so a vulnerability is determined to exist in some open source component, and then it becomes very hard for customers to actually find all the places in their infrastructure where this open source component is deployed, right? So they can go then repair it. So by and large, depending on other entities to provide support for those open source components, right, is critical for exactly the same reason that having support for proprietary components is critical. Customers need help, addressing this issue. And for example, you probably remember Heartbleed. You remember bash bugs. You remember issues with a credit reporting agency that basically had a massive hack of very sensitive information because they consumed an open source component that had a security vulnerability and they couldn't track it all down. Right.
This relates in some way, but don't ask me to articulate how, but I did want to talk a little bit about blockchain. And one of the reasons, I think this has changed, but about 1.5 years ago, I was in New York talking to a group of CIOs and CISOs from big banks. And blockchain, not cryptocurrency, but blockchain, they said they're all working on it, they're all really interested, but they didn't actually know of any useful applications. So has that changed?
I think, outside the domain of cryptocurrencies, I think, what blockchain is good at is providing transparency, right? I mean, it's a way for multiple parties to decide to exchange information in a way which is transparent, right? So we can agree on a version of the truth through a shared ledger, okay? And I think that has useful functionality. Now, I do think many of the strongest, most ardent supporters of blockchain make claims that are
really
beyond the pale. Okay, blockchain is not a replacement for databases. Blockchain really does not let you move beyond law enforced by government, right? I think but it is a way. It is a way for multiple parties to have interesting ways to have a common truth.
We didn't rehearse this one, but so does that help us fix the open source problem in some ways?
I think no. I really don't think so.
Okay.
I think there actually are very good systems now today for people to collaborate and cooperate, on open source. The truth of that is just obvious in the fact that open source, there are large successful open source projects that operate very well. I think the kinds of places where to me blockchain makes a lot of sense are things like supply chain, right? Where I want to be able to know reliably, like what was the set of inputs, physical inputs and transformative processes that were applied to this particular component, this particular part, right? And so while you could build such a system using a large centralized repository, it might be hard to get everyone to agree on that particular centralized repository, right? But you could conceivably have agreement on participating in some kind of permissioned blockchain that let you create a journal that would let me then extract out, okay, what were all of the raw inputs and processes that were transformative processes that led to this finished good.
Yeah, someone was explaining to me a while ago that one of the benefits of blockchain is you could trace the whole length of the supply chain, and their example was coffee, so that if I had some desire, if I enjoyed the coffee I had, I could actually trace it back to the farm and tip the farmer, which just struck me as probably something I'm not going to do.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that probably is not going to happen. But let's say that you discovered some bad lettuce. Okay,
Yeah.
it has an E. coli issue, right? You'd like to be able to trace it back to the farm that produced it, or maybe the transporters that moved it. Without having to go out and send out a lot of people to go track it all down, right? I think that's kind of where I think blockchain would be helpful.
Do you guys use blockchain?
We have a blockchain service, so we offer it to our customers, and we integrate with blockchain, through our supply chain management applications.
Okay. So what would you advise investors to do if they're looking at this? We ought to talk about companies, but now think of it as an investor. If you're looking at emerging technologies, if you're looking at cloud and blockchain and all this, AI, what would you advise investors to do?
Well, okay. First of all, cloud is overwhelmingly going to be the way that people do compute, right? I mean, just the economics of cloud, it just mean that the majority of data stored and computation over that data, right, is going to be inside cloud data centers, just because of economies of scale. I mean, that's now that doesn't mean there's not going to be a lot of compute outside cloud data centers, right? But I think the type of compute that's outside cloud data centers is more like the compute on your phones or other smart devices. There's going to be massive compute outside of cloud data centers. It's just not going to be in a data center at all. It's going to be on a little device floating out on the internet. I mean, I think what is projected that within 3 years there'll be 30 billion internet-connected devices, right? But all of those devices are generating data, right, that are being fed back into cloud data centers, right? And by the way, not just one cloud vendor, all cloud vendors, right? And so that the world is separating out into massive compute outside of any data center, massive compute in a small number of cloud vendors' data centers. I think in terms of AI, it's artificial intelligence and machine learning is transformative in ways that some of which are obvious. Okay, self-driving cars. Yes, eventually we'll have self-driving cars, but it's in ways that are not obvious too, right? Because we build applications that help our customers run their businesses. Now, one of the very important things that we do in those applications is we help customers make better decisions. And so we have hundreds of applications of machine learning, in our applications, right? I mean, it's just becoming part of the way that our engineers build those applications on behalf of our customers. And so we can do things like help our customers hire more qualified candidates. We can help our customers find better customers for themselves. We use this ourselves. I mean, we use machine learning techniques to understand our customer base so that we can serve them better. And that is going to be transformative in a way which I think is less obvious to most people because they don't really understand how the applications themselves work.
Do you have you guys bought any startups? What cool startups are you looking at?
What cool? I mean, what do we plan to buy next week? Is this related to the
this
investor
is,
question?
Yeah,
or?
this is related to the
Okay.
investor question.
Okay.
I'm supposed to say something about what am I supposed to say? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Don't take our word for it.
We acquire companies. We probably have acquired fewer companies recently than we have in the past, but we're always on the lookout for technologies that we can acquire and make sense of. I mean, we just recently closed a transaction for a machine learning related startup. So yes, we're always looking for companies that are smaller, doing very interesting things that would make sense as part of our portfolio. I think one of the advantages that Oracle has had over the years and will continue to have, and other companies too, is that by bringing together just a very rich collection of technologies that we can integrate on behalf of our customers up front, right? That's very valuable, and we'll continue to do that.
So if 4G was the sort of the start of the app economy, and now we're going to the next generation of telecom, I didn't say that buzzword, so you can't check it on your bingo card. We're going to the next generation of telecom. How do you see the app economy changing? How does the app developer fit into the kind of cloud services you're talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, it's not so much. I think that the most valued applications, most highly valued applications, will not be just the code that I wrote, on the device. Uh-huh. I mean, that's an important. There'll be an important component there, right? It's going to be the part of the application that runs back in the cloud, right? That's manipulating and managing the data, right? That's actually providing, providing real, real insight, either to a company or better communication, better interaction to individual users. So, I mean, one of the things that we're very focused on at Oracle, and actually one of the things that I manage is something we call Oracle Digital Assistants, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's using AI, right, to automate interactions with people. Now, so some of you may immediately get the vision of, oh, okay, I'm trying to get help and I just can't talk to a person. This thing is just constantly like bouncing me around. That's actually not our goal, right? So our goal is to be the digital assistant for you as a person, right? And so that if I want to find out, hey, please let my colleague know, that I can't make the meeting. Well, the digital assistant can find the person for you, right? Or if you ask the question like, hey, who is it that I actually need to escalate this approval to, right? The digital assistant can find that for you, right? If I'm out on a business trip and I'm spending money and I've got my receipts, I shouldn't have to package that up into expense report, I mean, we should know enough about what you're doing in the world, right, to be able to just have that filed on your behalf automatically, right? The most you should have to do is take a picture of something, right? And so that's a way I think that it makes governments and businesses more efficient because they automate the interaction between themselves and their customers. And by the way, government automating interaction between themselves and their citizens, right? But also it just makes the lives of individual people better.
Yeah, that's one I really look forward to because I think you could service delivery by governments to their customers, aka the citizens, is just ripe for improvement. And that's one where you think automation probably could make a huge difference. So I don't know, my wife is a doctor, and so I get to hear her adventures in calling various federal agencies and how many phone calls it has to go through and what she gets as answers, which I think is funny. She doesn't. But so we're getting back maybe to the investment thing. Where should government invest? What should government be looking at when it thinks about, here's a way for me to modernize. We need Congress to cooperate and provide money, but let's assume that happens. What should government look at to invest in?
Well, I think transition to cloud is essential, right? And the thing is, transition to cloud has to be done correctly. I mean, of course, you could do a bad job of moving to cloud just like you do a bad job of anything else, right? Okay. And I think the most important thing is understand that not all clouds are the same. Not all clouds, not all services in all clouds are the same, right? And that you need to be able to take advantage of more than one cloud. I mean, the worst possible thing you could do, right, is basically pick one single kind of solution, right, and try to shoehorn every problem you have into that. There are reasons to choose one vendor over another. There are reasons, but those reasons are usually application specific, right? There are reasons to prefer one database service over another, right? But again, those reasons are usually application specific. And so I think being aware of the fact that there are multiple clouds out there, very important. Being cognizant on a kind of application by application basis, right, of why I might want to choose one solution over another is also very important.
Who are your best customers?
Wow, I mean, we have many, many very good customers. I mean,
This is a setup.
Yeah, look, we traditionally Oracle has I mean, I think first of all the customers that we have really focused on, right? Historically, from the very beginning, the customer were actually U.S. federal defense companies, customers, right? So DoD, intelligence agencies. I mean, those are by far the customers that we definitely put on white gloves and we touch them. Okay. In terms of biggest users of Oracle technology, I mean, it's whoever has a lot of data that needs to be processed, and so that of course includes U.S. federal government, but it also includes telecom companies and financial services. But one thing that cloud has allowed Oracle to do is really expand the set of customers that we can address. Mm-hmm. So we have customers now who are tiny little companies that have dozens of employees, right? We never ever in the past could have dreamed that they would be Oracle customers because in the old days of compute, when you had to buy servers yourself and set them up and manage them yourself, right? That was just far beyond what any of those small companies could do. I mean, they couldn't possibly hire the people required in order to do that. Okay, now they don't have to. Now they just come to Oracle Cloud and they sign up, right? And they can use autonomous database, and they can use our applications, and they can use other services we provide with very little labor cost, right? And that means now they can start becoming our customers.
So you said we were in a transition to cloud. Where are we in that transition? And let's maybe break that into three parts: private sector transition, federal government transition, and then foreign transition, foreign countries, foreign companies.
Yeah, I think, okay, first of all, I think private sector is ahead of government all over the world.
Why is that?
Well, you can probably tell me better about why that is. But I think in general, I do think you tend to find private companies that are a little bit more. They tend to be earlier adopters. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, not every private company is anywhere in cloud. I mean, of course, there's many large private companies that do nothing in cloud. Okay. But by and large, on average.
Is that for security reasons? Is it investment? I mean, what is it?
Yeah, no, not really for security reasons. I think it's more just worry, concern, doubt, lethargy. I mean, there are lots of reasons why people don't move technology stacks. Usually most of them are not good. I'll tell you, a few years ago when I talked to customers about security, right? It was like their number one objection to moving to cloud. It's like, well, I can't possibly move to cloud because I have all these security requirements. You guys can't possibly take into consideration. You guys can't possibly meet, right? Okay. Now a few years later, it's nearly 180 degrees, change. It's like, I want to move to cloud because I realize that's the only way I can be secure, right? And this isn't like mid-sized companies that don't have the resources. I mean, these are large banks, right? These are people who have massive resources themselves, right? But they feel overwhelmed by the threat, and the threat is real. I mean, the threat is getting harder every single day. I mean, what you have out there is you have attackers who are incredibly knowledgeable, who are incredibly well-funded, right, and who are organized, right, and they share information among themselves, right? I mean, I really don't think there's any private company out there, right, other than an at-scale cloud vendor like Oracle, right, who can afford to properly defend against them, right? And that's why, in the private sector at least, there is this sense of urgency to try to move to cloud. Now, some industries have regulatory restrictions. I mean, like, okay, by law, we have to have the data in our country. By law, we have to, have the data in our data center. We have to show regulators, this, that, and the other thing about the way we manage data, right? And so cloud vendors like Oracle, we address that by making sure we stand up data centers in different countries. And in the case of Oracle, at least, we can actually build a cloud region right in a customer's data center. So we can actually run kind of an extension of Oracle Cloud right into customer's data center, and that helps them address, some of their constraints.
Yeah, to use yet another buzzword, I'm really looking forward to the Internet of Things because it will. You mentioned attack surface. It will multiply the attack surface immensely. And my favorite hack of last year was a company that was hacked through their internet-connected fish tank, right, which they probably didn't think of as the
Yeah.
forefront of security. So
Well,
we're going to see a lot more.
Cameras, fish tanks. How about the VPN connection that you had to the contracting company that managed your refrigeration, right? And that, I mean, I think that's what did in Target.
That's Target, yeah.
Yeah.
So where would you put, this is Washington, and we have to say this word, where would you put China on this? If you're looking at competition, how does the US stack up in the use of emerging technologies in the transition to the new computing environment? Where do we compare to other countries, and in particular, our favorite sea-letter country?
Well, I think China has a particular interest in AI, which is controlling their population, right? And they seem to be very good at that. I mean, and just take a look at what's happening in Western China to see, like,
Xinjiang.
Yes, exactly how good they are controlling their population. Now, I think that there are countries in the world that are using cybersecurity vulnerabilities to their advantage, right? To both steal proprietary information, right, and prepare to use that as a weapon. And I think just in terms of defending the Western democracies, right? We absolutely have to do a much better job on cybersecurity. Absolutely, right? Because I mean, we have enemies, and there's just no sense of pretending we don't.
So you brought it up, and so it actually wasn't on any of our lists of questions here, but data localization, right? And so I actually don't, so sometimes you hear about Splinternet. I think that's kind of silly because I'm not sure there's any country, perhaps other than Myanmar and North Korea, that will give, and Cuba, I beg your pardon, that will give up the benefits of connectivity. But they are not going to move to new protocols, right? They still will want to connect, but they'll also want to extend sovereign control, right, over information, over services. So when you look at sovereign control, when you look at localization, what do you think about it? What would you like to see done differently?
Well, okay, so I think a lot of time, like with government regulation, there tends to be a little bit of a disconnect between a regulator's view of the world and the way technology actually works, right? And so I think some of the data sovereignty requirements that exist around the world, same thing with some of the privacy requirements for that matter, they're just not really in tune with the way that IT systems work. Now, to be perfectly frank, for an at-scale vendor like Oracle, in some ways, these regulations, they actually help us, right? Because we can afford to build data centers everywhere, right? We can afford to spend a lot of money to actually comply with GDPR and other sorts of privacy regulations, right? Much harder for individual customers to do that, right? It's much harder for startups to do that, right? And so while it's not really, I think, the intent of some of these regulators, if anything, they've actually helped cement the benefit of large at-scale vendors.
I think I just heard a scream from Brussels.
Yes.
We might want to come back to that one, but let me see now if there's questions in the audience that we want to address. And I think there's microphones on the other side. People have questions. I was surprised. So you actually see GDPR. You don't have problems with GDPR, though?
Well, I mean, it is something that it's something that we have to deal with. It's something that we spend money working on. But because we're at scale, it's not overwhelming to us.
Okay. Go ahead, please. And could you identify yourself?
I'm just helping with the microphone.
Oh, she's helping with the microphone. Oh, we got one in the back. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Here you go.
You can still ask a question. Yeah.
I probably have a lot.
Thank you. I'm Olivia Zhang with China's Caixin Media. I just want to follow up on China on business perspective. So the administration is trying to define emerging and foundational technology. I'm wondering if that a concern to Oracle that might be a challenge to Oracle's China business. especially like during this uncertain time that is still like no specific definition of what emergent foundation technology is? Thank you.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure what the question was, but it sounded like a general question about our business in China, and then is it an issue whether or not is an issue because the definition of emergent technology is not especially clear. Well, just to take the last part first. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not. I don't think it actually matters like what exactly the definition of emergent technology is. I mean, we have we spend billions of dollars a year on R&D, and we build new technologies all the time. We constantly watch what's kind of being worked on by other parties. We especially watch research in universities to try to understand what it is that we need to do as we build our products, especially build our cloud products. Now, we have business in China. We operate in China. We have a lot of customers in China. I think there's just it's no secret that there are obstacles in doing business in China, right? I mean, there are regulatory barriers, and there are which things that seem like non-tariff trade barriers to me. But nonetheless, we still have a good business in China, and we plan to continue that.
So I think the reference was also to the Commerce Department proposed regulation on emerging technologies that includes AI, robotics, and quantum. So this is an idea that we need to somehow, this might be a better question on innovation and how you do it, but the theory is that it's kind of like Dr. Strangelove, the scene where they talk about people stealing your vital fluids and all, that we need to, that was mean. We need to reduce the flow of technology out of the US. And you could reasonably say there's benefits to doing that, but there could be potential risks to our ability to innovate too. How would that affect Oracle?
I don't think it would affect us at all. I mean, we've lived with export restrictions of various kinds for many years, and we have very talented engineers all over the world, and I don't think any sort of like restriction on export of technology to China would impact our ability to innovate.
Are you guys doing anything in quantum? You must be looking at it.
Well, I mean, look, we look at it, we monitor it. We're not trying to build quantum computers.
Yeah. Mm. Okay, more questions? Got one in the front here. Yeah. Two.
Hi, my name is Sam Chi. I'm a technology attorney with FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. This is a question on my behalf, but not for my employer. Just have to say that, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you about Hackback, and in particular, where do you feel that the line should be drawn between government action and the action of the private sector?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense for the government of the United States and others to maintain an offensive cyber attack capability. I mean, I just do, because cyber has the potential to be a battleground like the real world. Now, I do not think that companies or governments should, as a matter of practice, right, attack other governments or other companies, because they think that they've detected a cyber attack. For one thing, they could be wrong, right? They could be wrong about the source, right? And they could take actions that would be very regrettable, right? And for another thing, it just in the same way that it would make no sense to launch like some sort of physical real world attack, because you believe you have been transgressed in some way automatically, right? I mean, it just makes no sense. I mean, it requires serious thought and consideration before taking any sort of offensive action, either in the real world, right, or in the cyber world, right? Now, I do believe, right, that we have to face the reality that not all governments in the world, are going to have the same degree of discretion about constraining their actions, right? And so that means we have to be extremely good at defense.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything because you know what I think. We had a question up in the front, I think. We have two, in fact, so.
Yes, hi, thanks for being here. I had a question about hardware, and there apparently are now compromises that are being built into hardware. How does Oracle and their server farms manage to certify the hardware they use?
Well, okay, so for one thing, all of the hardware that we use is Oracle hardware. Okay, now of course that doesn't mean that we manufacture all the components, right? I mean, we do rely on third-party components, and we do rely on third-party assembly for a lot of it. Okay, but what we have is a robust supplier security assurance program where we monitor and test all of those third-party components and all of those third-party assemblies. So we don't put anything into our data centers unless we've gone through and followed that process. I mean, it is definitely something that we have to pay attention to. It's something that everyone has to pay attention to. I mean, you probably saw the news reports several weeks ago now about Supermicro. I mean, it's a real issue, right? That every vendor has to stay on top of.
So just as an aside, I was talking with one of the major European signals intelligence agencies a couple weeks ago. And their view was this is something we need to pay attention to. You need to have robust monitoring systems in place, but that right now it's so easy to get into any network using the good old traditional means that you wouldn't do the high-end supply chain infection. And that told you what their research program was, I think. But, that will change eventually. My theory is that someday we'll figure out how to make networks more secure. And at that point, supply chains attacks might become more interesting to people. But this European power had not seen any, and their assumption was because it just wasn't worth it now. Something to watch for. They're worried about people setting up for the future, but not something they'd seen. We had another question there, and then we're coming close to the end.
My name is Jonathan Diggle, formerly with the Department of Defense and now an independent consultant. I wanted to ask, thank you for your remarks, first of all, but I wanted to ask, earlier you said Oracle had an advantage because you had more resources to bring to bear than the bad guys, I think is what you said. And then later the discussion we talked about the OPM breach, and then finally adversaries to U.S. national interests. Those adversaries probably have resources that are in excess of Oracle's. How do you balance those comments?
Well, I think I guess I'd be probably more worried if the only target those adversaries were worried about were Oracle. But it's not. Their interest is varied and fragmented. They have lots and lots of targets out there in the world to look at. I think even so, even if every adversary was really 100% focused on Oracle, right? I think because of the homogeneity of our environments, right? Because of the resources we apply, and especially because of some of the techniques that we use in our cloud, which are just fundamentally different than any other cloud vendor or any customer. I mean, just to give you an idea, I mean, we don't. The computers that we deploy in our cloud are not the same as what we deploy on premise or what any other cloud vendor uses. We've specifically separated out the computer into two components. One is an application processor that runs customer code. The second is a security processor, which the only connection between those two, right, is through network connection. There's no shared memory, there's no shared bus, nothing, right? So the only way into and out of a computer or storage unit, right, in our cloud is through this separate security processor, right? Code running in an application processor cannot get into the security processor. Code running in the security processor, our code, cannot get into the application processor. So, by using that and other techniques, we just have a much more secure infrastructure than anywhere else in the world.
Okay, we got one in the front. I was going to say last call. This is it. I have one after this, but it'll be quick.
Hi, I'm Greg Schuckman. I'm with the University of Central Florida. So I wanted to get to your cybersecurity point. We have one of the top, if not the top, college cyber teams in the country. We have 14,000 students in our College of Engineering and Computer Science, one of the largest colleges. But we constantly hear about how there's not enough talent going into cyber, and how companies like yours and others are looking at H-1Bs and other ways to get the talent that you need to do this. So what's your concern and what's your solution for dealing with talent supply chain?
Well, I think, our solution is to hire. I mean, we hire lots and lots of people, all the time, right? Both in the United States and outside the United States. And so, if you have a nice supply of cybersecurity folks for us, I'm sure we'd really like to get hold of them.
Okay, my last question is, so we're talking about emerging technologies, and we have identified as a country and as a tech community, a set of technologies that are currently at the frontier. And the way you described it at the beginning is, we know about them, but we haven't quite figured out how to apply them, if I got that right, is right. What do you think the next generation of emerging technologies will look like? And part of the reason I'm asking this is I was reading about NASA has a faster than speed of light program underway.
No.
Theoretically possible, they say. What is it? And so warp drive will not be the next emerging technology. What do you want to? This is your chance to be blue sky.
Okay. Well, I think fundamentally, the things that are going to not change, right? First of all, the fixed point here is cloud, right? I mean, cloud computing is not going away, right? Just like centralized like water facilities have not gone away. Okay, I mean, it's just once the economies of scale for that sort of centralized computing mechanism means it's here forever. It's a utility. Okay, I think what is gonna be very interesting, right, is the increase in bandwidth, right, available to mobile devices and distributed devices, right? And I think that is going to fundamentally be what creates new experiences for users and creates new challenges for both securing systems, right, and being able just to manage all that huge quantity of data.
Mm. Okay. Well, please join me in thanking our speaker.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. You get ambushed by the press.